Hello and welcome to the Investing Edge. I'm Sumaira Abdi. We've always grappled with thinking very long term. For most people our age, retirement literally seems like a lifetime away until it isn't. So take a moment and set in place an investment solution that works to optimize your kitty, and we're going to help you do just that in this episode of the Investing Edge. Joining me as always is Feroze Aziz, Deputy CEO of Anand Rathi Private Wealth Management. Hi, Feroze. So which is the best way to actually plan for someone's retirement? Let's say for somebody, who has just retired. What's the checklist like?
Sumira, I think when a person retires, there are several things to keep in mind when it comes to managing money for the residual period of his life and to make sure that the accumulated corpuses serve him and help him lead the same lifestyle which he or she has acclimatized herself or himself to. So I think the first thing is to importantly compute what's the life expectancy. We think that 20-year post-retirement to 30 years post-retirement is the kind of plan you will need. So that's one number which you need to be clear about, 20 to 30 years. If you're retiring at the age of 60, you will have to provision for 25 years of being able to utilize that corpus. The second most important number is the inflation number. That's another thing which you need to deliberate depending on your spending patterns. Provisioning for inflation anywhere between 7 to 8% is a wise thing to do. Third thing is important. These are very, very important building blocks for you to devise a strategy from a retirement standpoint. That's why first, before going to the strategy, it's important to it's very important for a person to introspect and what these numerical values would be. The other thing is the third thing, which is what is the rate at which your money, which you've accumulated so far, will grow at a conservative, in a conservative strategy. I think that number should be somewhere close to 10%. So after having done this, a person needs to, one, understand what his or her monthly expense is. If you have 1 lakh rupee expense per month, and if you have 20 years to live on that corpus, the corpus, if you need, is 1.75 crores. If you have 30 years to live on it, you will need 2.75 crores. So this is very important. After that, a person needs to bifurcate and see whether he or she has more money than they can consume. So if, for example, if a person has totally 5 crore rupees, 1 lakh rupee is the monthly expense. Then you split the money into two components. One is 2.75 crores and the other component is 2.25 crores. The 2.25 crores which you have, which may never be consumed by you, needs to be a separate long-term growth-only portfolio. The 2.75 crores which you expect to consume in the subsequent 30 years will need a different strategy. So for a person who retires, Sumaira, to cut the long story short, needs to bifurcate the corpus. And if the corpus is not sufficient to take care of your monthly expense, you will have to cut down on your expense to make sure that you don't use up the money sooner.
Okay, so what about someone who's still working and planning now for the years ahead?
See, for a person who has 10, 20 years to go for retirement, the planning is going to be identical, but the fact that the person knows what's the corpus he or she will need to accumulate can customize the current spending patterns and in turn the saving pattern so that you use those 10, 15 years to arrive at that corpus so that you can lead the life. So point I'm making is if you have 10, 15 years more to retirement, make sure you compute what's the money you will need at retirement. If you have a 1 lakh rupee monthly expense, make sure that you can provision for a 2.75 crores at retirement and start saving up right away.
Feroze, does the quantum of money matter? What I mean to ask is, should HNI strategy be different?
See, the strategy, to my mind, is only of two categories. One, a person who has sufficient money after this computation, and another who does not have sufficient money. If the number you need is 1.75 crores, but you only have 1 crore, then there has to be some extra activity to create more income or to reduce spending. So to answer your question, Sumira, everybody has to arrive at the number they will need at retirement. And that will be very personalized, and that will depend on the spending patterns uh, of the discretionary and the non-discretionary spending a person is used to doing. So find out that number and see which side are you on. Is your total surplus going to supersede that number, or is it going to fall short? If it's going to fall short, you will have to act on your incomes or your savings by controlling expenditure.
You know, there are a lot of preconceived notions that people have regarding what they should be investing in, in preparation for or when they actually retire. So, what do you think they should be keeping in mind?
Yes, Sumera, there are several important things which there could be myths as well. Like I've heard several investors saying that I'm almost going to retire, I don't need equity. So that's some big myth to my mind from an asset class standpoint. Equity is very critical because post-retirement life is not 3 year, 5 year, it's 20 years. So 20 years, if equity is not there, then it's very difficult for you to sustain the lifestyle. Maybe not for the first 7, 8 years of your retirement, but post that you will find it very difficult. That's one tip. Please don't be under this notion that you can exempt yourself from equity just because you're retired. The proportions could be different. The second important tip, like you said, Sumera, property, especially in India, is not a very good idea closer to retirement. Why? Because globally, there is a concept called reverse mortgage. In a low interest rate environment, a person can pledge their house and take the money today because the interest rates are lower. That concept is called reverse mortgage. Very important for a person to understand. But in India, reverse mortgage is not possible with these kind of high interest rates. So property is not a good idea, especially during the consolidation years, like you rightly pointed, Sumera. Gold and debt are very, very important asset classes for a person closer to retirement. I think from an asset class standpoint, this is what I would like to suggest to the viewer closer to retirement. From a product standpoint, I think having long-term debt is very, very important. Long-term debt, by which I mean government securities of 20 years in the form of a mutual fund. Let me be more specific. Like, for example, there's a mutual fund called Reliance Nivesh, which buys a bond of 20, 25 years of government of India, which implies that you've locked in interest rates, high interest rates for long periods of time, almost till your life expectancy. So that's one important tip. Long-term locked-in debt is critical. From a solution standpoint, a systematic withdrawal plan is a very important tip. Systematic withdrawal plans make it very tax efficient. If you're going to get a lakh rupee as your regular income from your investments, but if 30,000 out of it is going to go away in taxation, then you're actually not getting the lakh. So tax efficiency becomes very, very crucial. And their systematic withdrawal plan is another tip I would leave the viewer behind with.
Okay, so what are the risks that a retired person's portfolio can face?
One risk is the clear risk of a medical exigency and a large portion of the retirement savings getting eaten away. That's one risk which you see fructifying with a very high probability. So that's one risk. The second risk is the risk of a hyperinflation kind of a situation. If inflations shoot up after 5 years and your incomes are not, and you're not getting a recurring income, so hyperinflation is one big risk which a person takes post-retirement. The third is the liability risk of all the profession he has taken up just before retirement. So that's the third and important risk to my mind. I think these are the risks which a person needs to keep in mind post-retirement. Inflation, hyperinflation, risk of medical care taking away a large portion of your hard-earned decades of accumulated corpus, and liabilities potentially arising out of the profession you took up before retirement.
Feroze, what would you recommend by way of, say, insurance for retirees?
I think a health insurance or a medical cover is very, very critical. There are a couple of policies which try and target this segment, which is called the senior citizen red carpet health insurance policy, which is a very good insurance policy, which and similar likewise from other insurance companies, from several insurance companies, could help you address a health need or a medical expense post-retirement. So that's the mitigant to the risk which I just highlighted.
And what about estate planning?
Estate planning is very, very critical. It's been critical across different life stages of one's investing career. Of course, the emphasis on that needs to go up as you progress in life. Estate planning is critical because your spouse may need some help, understanding, and the clear custody of the assets which you own in case of your absence. So, if God forbid there is an eventuality, your spouse should be able to access it. So, estate planning is important. In estate planning, what is critical is to have your clearly laid out thought process. How much of these assets would you want to be passed on to your spouse? How much to your kids, your grandkids? So, laying that thought process down is very critical. And the second step is to create documentation to reflect what you actually believe in or what you want to get executed. So I think it's not just about documentation, it's also about deciding what you want to do with your assets and also creating documentation which marries your thought process.
Okay, well, safe to say that while retirement itself may be far away for a lot of us, it's best to get on with the planning right away. A quick break for now. We'll be right back to talk about the big cues that investors should keep on their radar. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching The Investing Edge, and with me is Feroze Aziz, Deputy CEO of Anand Rathi Private Wealth Management. So we've spoken about retirement already, and now I want to talk a bit about some important global and local events lined up which have the potential to impact an investor's portfolio. So Feroze, the first thing is the US elections, of course. What should investors do in the run-up to the results next year?
Yes, Sumera, I think we have had a very, very eventful year so far across the globe in terms of capital markets. If you ask me, will the US have an impact from the short-term standpoint? The answer is yes. What transpires in the important event from a large global market perspective will have its spillover effects. Given the fact that most emerging economies have a clear coupling happening over the last few months with the US markets. Third, I think since the market has been driven with liquidity and has been flushed with liquidity, this election is critical because that will try and throw some light on what is going to be the stance of the Fed. Will it be as liberal as it's been in expanding the balance sheet, or it's going to be a lot lesser liberal? Unlike the last few years. So it's an important event. I think it can have short-term impacts of about a quarter or two. But I think after that event happens, an economy like India will be very inward-looking. Once it becomes inward-looking, then we look at how our domestic market is doing with the economic slowdown expected this year. But I think the next year, we should look at a very, very sharp recovery given the smaller basis we're going to begin the next financial year with.
Okay, so if you say that India is set to become an inward-looking economy, we have some state elections coming up. Is that a big cue that investors should look out for?
See, the two kinds of events. One which actually change the direction of the market. The other which only induce volatility. So I think if you're looking at these assembly elections across Bihar, West Bengal, and some states, those are only volatility inducers in the market. And I don't think they can directionally change what's the potential return. Second, I think our capital markets, especially the large stocks, are not dependent on the overall economy as such. Because your top 6 stocks, just the banking stocks are a very good representation of how the economy and the NPA situation will pan out. But if you look at IT, if you look at pharma, you look at energy, you look at the largest stocks, of course, Reliance, are not so dependent on how the rural economy recovers. So to answer your pointed question, the domestic events, to my mind, the ones which are on the cards, are not direction changers, but they are volatility inducers. So you will have some degree of extra volatility for those 1 week to 1 month periods every time these events unfold.
And Firoz, what's the advice or what would you say to mutual fund investors who are facing this big trust deficit now with the MF industry?
So, in my opinion, if the whole reduced faith, which has been displayed in the form of reasonable amount of exits from equity funds, especially, is not backed by data, what happens is most investors have a habit of looking at absolute returns only. If equity has delivered over the last 3 years in the form of Nifty to the extent of only 4% return per annum, it's unlikely that a mutual fund will meet your expectations of 13 to 15%. What happens is most investors don't want to do a relative comparison of how the mutual fund did vis-a-vis the index. Of course, there are several mutual funds which have underperformed the index as well by 0.5% or 1%. That can't be a very, very strong reason to shun these mutual funds. Second is, I think, coupled with this phenomena of a lower market return and in turn a lower mutual fund return, what's happened is there is time at hand. So people have heard stories of the last 3, 4, 5 months of people making money in direct equity and think that it's easy to make money by buying stocks. And that's where the relative comparison between using mutual funds or using a demat account, buying stocks, the buying stock theory seems to be gaining flavor, especially when you see so many other people having made money. But it's very important for a person to remember, if it was this easy to make money, like it has been in the last 4 months, mutual fund industry wouldn't exist. So I personally think the reality will soon be there for people to see. And when they start hearing these stories of losses which retail investors might face by going high on risk, that's been rewarded for 4 months, but that will not be for 4 years. So I think things will get corrected. And we see that first signs of that in the September redemptions have come down significantly, except the multi-cap category, which has had a very large outflow.
Firoz, thanks so much as always for joining in. Well, with that, it's time now for some interesting mutual fund analysis. Here's Aarti Desikan, head of the Bengaluru unit at Anand Rathi Private Wealth Management. Over to you, Aarti.
Thank you, Sumaira, for having me here today. Today, we are going to analyze the SBI Focused Equity Fund, which was launched in October 2004 and currently has an AUM of 10,114 crores. Now, this is an open-ended equity scheme and invests into multi-cap stocks and falls under the focused fund category as per the SEBI categorization. According to the MF rating at Anand Rathi, we have given this scheme 5 stars, and here are 5 reasons why. The fund has been managed since May 2009 by Mr. R. Srinivasan, who has over 26 years of industry experience. His investment style is based on a growth strategy wherein he picks up large cap and mid cap stocks which are capable of outperforming the market over time because of their future potential. Now, coming to the construct of the fund has a concentrated portfolio of just 28 stocks, including foreign stocks such as Microsoft and Alphabet, and it's spread across 11 sectors. The equity portion, which is 96% of the scheme, is allocated between 67% being invested in large cap stocks and the balance 33% being invested in mid cap and small cap stocks. Now, at Anand Rathi, we evaluated the SBI Focused Equity Fund and we have given the fund a 5 on 5 ranking. This ranking methodology that we use has various parameters, both historical, such as return consistency, the risk of the fund, and the consistency of the fund manager to pick stocks, as well as futuristic parameters such as valuation and the stock potential. Now, our analysis at Anand Rathi is that the fund turns out to be a star performer, both on historical as well as futuristic parameters. Now, let me add some numbers there. From a performance standpoint, which is measured in terms of rolling returns, the scheme has generated significantly better returns than that of its peers, So if you look at a 3-year average return of the scheme, it has generated approximately 4.87% vis-a-vis what the rest of the category average is, which is just 0.93%. And in fact, what the Nifty has generated in the same time period is just 1.32%. In fact, as an investor, if you had invested into the scheme at inception and had put in 1 lakh, you would have made 14.3 lakhs, which is an IRR of 18% today. And if you had put in the same 1 lakh into the Nifty, you would have made approximately 6.6 lakhs, which is an IRR of around 12.5%. Now, from a risk standpoint as well, the scheme has done relatively well and has a lower risk, which we measure in terms of standard deviation, compared to the rest of its peers. The average standard deviation for the scheme on a 3-year basis is approximately 20.5%, whereas the average for the entire category is around 21.5%. And lastly, on the valuation bit, it does extremely well from the PE and the PEG that the fund has and is in line with the rest of the category of the industry. And this is predominantly because the fund manager has been able to pick stocks that have growth potential over a period of time. And for the above reason, Sumaira, we rank this fund a 5 on 5. Thank you.
Aarti, thanks so much. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Investing Edge. See you next week.